takes a second to uh, like collaborate with or calibrate with Instagram, and it's recording right now. So
Ooh,
like
lovely.
they'll see it. They'll see all of this. But okay, so now I hit go live. Yep, that'll all be a part of it. Hi everybody. I am Brittany from Teaching to a Riot.
I'm Cody with the Lowly Behaviorist, or I guess I am the Lowly Behaviorist.
And we are going to be talking about all things behavior today. So I am kind of like interviewing Cody. This is his first live, so hey. We're going to talk about the social validity of behavior. We're going to talk about behavior in the classroom, finding patterns, um, uh, connecting the environment to unsafe behaviors and kind of what causes those unsafe behaviors for our kiddos. And what else? Like variables that are outside of our control as educators. Like, what can we do about like our students not being on medication or they're really hungry? What can teachers do to kind of help our students through those struggles? So let's start. Let's just go into it with the questions. Okay.
Okay.
So and I know I sent you like it was more like a statement on bullying. Like I just summarized your real because I couldn't figure out like what I wanted the question to
Mm-hmm.
be. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that looking at it and just spontaneously, impulsively asking you, you have a reel that talks about bullying. In the reel,
Mm-hmm.
you name 4 steps to be taken: address it, name it, explain it, hard line, and close it. Can you explain that a little bit more for teachers?
Yeah. So the address it method. So it's the address it method in the 4 steps is the method that I came up with when I was working in my TK through 12th grade school district out in Santa Barbara, California, with teachers who just didn't know how to handle and address the comments that kids were making and the inappropriate either racial or sexist comments they were making to each other. So this is the perfect way to handle those comments in your classroom because they're going to happen. And we can either kick the kids out of the classroom and now it's becoming this whole, oh, look at you. And then it becomes this whole snowball effect of like the teachers not handling it appropriately, even though like the teachers are handling it appropriately, but then it doesn't look like they are. So then it like becomes this whole bash on teachers when like, let's get the teacher something they can actually say to address it. And then also if they need to take that next step, it's like they're addressing it, but also showing that they're going to handle it as people too. So the address it method is we name it. First and foremost, something's happening in your classroom. That is your classroom. You need to make sure that everyone sees in the room that you're going to address and name what is happening in the room. So, hey, that's sexist. That's racist. You've already now given a consequence to whatever it is that's happening by calling it out. And now that you've called that person out, you can call them in to help them support that education moment where we're going, hey, what you did was racist. And if you may not know why it's racist, let's explain why it's racist. Because that word has been used to harm people in the past. That word is used to uh, call for violence against a certain group, whatever the reason is, because there is a reason these words are bad, not just because they're bad. They're bad because they're harmful, because they cause violence, because they incite rage, because they incite feelings of turmoil inside people that then makes them react certain ways. Those are the reasons we don't use these words, not just because they're taboo or bad. There's socially valid reasons that we don't use these words. And then there's the whole we can't police these words. So if it comes from a student who is particularly of that community and they're using a word you don't like, you can say, hey, I don't like, I'm glad that you're using that word and you feel comfortable with that word, but in class, it's not okay because it is still racist. It's still sexist in the current tones. I'm glad you're reclaiming it, but we don't use it in your work in this class, which is that hard line. We're giving the rule. Like we've named it, we've said why it's a problem, and now we're hardlining it in this class. We do not use that word. And if you continue to use that word, there's going to be a consequence. We're going to call home. You're going to get a letter home. We're going to go up and talk to the principal, something, right? So you can now explain and give your consequence and then be able to follow through with that consequence if it continues. So you've already set them up for success by doing all of this. And then you just close it out. You bring everyone back in and rebuild that community because the community was harmed. And so the close it out is I appreciate you using your words next time appropriately so we don't cause any more harm or cause any more violence. You need to apologize to your friends so we can go ahead and move on with class. We've closed it out. We've moved on. We don't need to dwell on it anymore because we've addressed it. We've named it. We've explained it. We've hardlined it. We've closed it out. We move on with whatever our lesson is. We don't have to dwell anymore. That's the whole idea. And that's where like talking to kids who have been bullied, talking to people who have been bullied, is the bystander effect. No one's addressing it. Half the time they know what to do. They just want someone else to help them or someone else to address it with them. And this helps that bystander and give the teacher something to actively do in those situations.
Not only that, like it models how their peers can handle it, like naming it. And when you just name it, you're not feeding into it.
Yep.
It's just that's sexist.
Yep.
And I work with behavioral kids, right? So when they get called racist, they really don't like it. Like they are kind of, my middle schoolers are on a thing right now where they're calling everything racist. But yeah, everything's racist. I'm racist. Everybody's racist.
A few years ago, everything was homophobic. Don't be homophobic. Make me do work's homophobic.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Or like I have to tell this kid no, and he's like, "That's racist." I'm like, "All right, okay." Okay. And like we actually really need to address like that undermines like some really valid like work that needs to be done, but they don't. They're kids. They don't care.
And like at that point, the battle you have to choose is like, do I have that conversation with you, or do we just
do the work?
Sure you don't throw the chair today and do the work. Just do the work. We'll have that conversation later.
Right. Yeah. So when you name it, like you're not, and you do it in just like a monotone. You're not feeding into it. You're not giving it all this attention. Like that's sexist or that's racist. And then you said hardline it.
Yeah, hardline it.
Okay. Yeah. So hardlining it is you're proposing the consequence that's going to happen.
Yeah, you're giving the rule. You're giving the reason, like this is what's going to happen if it continues to happen. So you're just saying like whatever it is, whatever consequence you're willing to follow through in that time is what you're going to do. Because it's that if then, that when then, that kind of utilizing some of this ABA language and consequent language, but also putting it in very clear terms that what you're doing is not okay. And the behavior you're doing is going to have a consequence that matches it, just like everything. Like if I speed, the consequence is getting a ticket. So the consequence of you screaming and yelling inappropriate languages, we're going to have a conversation now about you using that language. And it might be we have a conversation every single day until you get tired of having a conversation about it. Because I can't control you, but I can definitely react to what you're doing and make it not fun for you.
Right. So like you're just holding that boundary that, you know what, that damages the community and we're not going to use the language that damages community. And then the restorative piece afterward where you do some community building because the community has been harmed. That is fantastic. Yeah. Because it's not like super feeding into the behavior, which I really, I do see like people want to like have a lecture right then and there. And that's just not, all that's going to do is make it worse.
And that feeds into the behavior that gives them a chance to argue, that gives a chance to have an argument about why they didn't say it or why it's a joke or why it's this. And it's like, it doesn't matter your reasoning for saying it. Ultimately, the word you used is racist or is sexist. Not you are. Like, you're good. Just what you used was a problem. We're going to fix that in this classroom. I don't care what you do outside of this room, but in this room, we respect each other. It's that kind of like just basically saying what everyone is saying, but putting it on the kids and letting them know the valid reasons why it's there. Not just because I'm an adult and I say so. It's, no, this is not okay. And fixing the problem, because half the time we don't fix the problem. We just say, oh, go punish it. Well, that kid who just got like harmed is still being harmed because we're ignoring them now. Now we've addressed the problem. Everyone, like, it may not be the best way, but at least we're addressing everyone's needs in the moment. And then if it's a really bad situation, we check in with the person who was harmed and like, hey, what do you need to be whole again? Do you need to go take a break? Do you need to go have a few days off? What do you need? But at that moment, it's not about the person who did the act. It's about the person who was harmed. You've already addressed the act. Now we're recuperating and fixing the person who was harmed. We spend more time focusing on the person who did the harming than we do on the person who is harmed.
Typically, right?
Yeah.
Typically we do, yeah. I like that language too. What do you need to do to be whole again? That's fantastic. that I feel like we could just end the live now, and it's just so valuable. Like that was awesome.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. So you talk about social validity of
Mhm.
behavior. And I personally want to hear more about this because it seemed really interesting in the real, and I kind of got a little confused, but
Mhm.
you're going to clarify, right?
I'm
So
going to clarify.
can you talk about more about the social validity of behavior and what implications does that have on behavior in the classroom?
So, going through my program that I went through to become a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, I had the honor of working with Dr. Jose Martinez. And he was a fabulous doctor of behavior and psychology out in Florida, through the Florida Institute of Technology. I know you don't often hear good news and good things coming out of Florida, but this is a good thing coming out of Florida. Like they have a great program at Fit. I went through the program. I loved the teachers that I had, and they really stressed validity of what we were doing because behavior ABA is dangerous. We are controlling and manipulating and can potentially harm people if we don't do it correctly. And that's what punishment procedures do is they harm. And so when we're looking at the social validity of what we're doing, we have to look at all contexts of that classroom, of the kid, of the teachers, of the other kids in the environment, as well as just the culture of the kids' culture. So that idea that what we want as adults is very different than what kids want, and kids have their own culture. And then you have to break it down into what their racial culture is, their racial background, their community culture, their home culture. All of that plays a huge role in what is valid. And a lot of behavior, a lot of ABA, a lot of psychology is rooted in white centric situations. White studies, it's a lot of white people who are right handed. I'm a left handed white man. There's a lot of studies that I can't participate in because I'm left-handed. It literally will say, we only want right-handed people. I'm like, well, that's rude. I want to participate in this cool study, but I can't because I'm a lefty. And so it's like those kinds of things where we're only focused on science and the studies of ABA and the studies of behavior from one vantage point. And so as we start to grow and decolonize and really think about what behavior is, we have to start looking at the social validity and what it means to behave in different cultures. And that's really what we have to look at when we're looking at behavior. Because kids yelling and screaming and talking out of turn is disrespectful in one culture, but in other cultures, kids talking out of turn or just calling out, that's how kids talk. That's what kids are expected to do. That's how families talk to each other, is they just talk over each other and they're rambunctious and they're loud and it's just what they do. And so like different home cultures have different behaviors. And if we're going to expect kids to behave in a classroom, we can't set the expectations to one cultural norm. It has to be accepting of all cultural norms. And that's where we have to really look at, are our expectations appropriate for our cultures? And that's where it comes to our classroom expectations for teachers, and those implications are a lot of our kids are brown, they're black, they're kids of color, they're indigenous kids. They're not kids with white Eurocentric heteronormative backgrounds. They are kids with single moms who have dads who are in prison. They're, impoverished kids, intentionally exploited kids, underrepresented and underserved populations. So there's a bunch of populations out there that as educators we have to teach that we don't have experience with in our personal lives. I think I read a study that just came out. 75% of white people don't have friends outside of white color, and like whiteness being one of the most segregated cultures because we segregate ourselves and only really maintain within our whiteness. And that's kind of true. We don't experience other cultures, and when we do, we don't embrace them as much as we can. And that's what we have to do in classrooms as white teachers, as white educators. We have to check our whiteness, and that's where that social validity comes in. Is a lot of social validity is based on whiteness, and we have to look at it and change that and look at it from a multicultural perspective and the culturally informed perspective to make sure that we're meeting our kids where they're at and not putting unrealistic goals on them, because that's how we increase these behaviors that we're seeing. And particularly with kids who are neurodivergent, kids who or groups that are neurodivergent, kids who have neurodiverse brains, ADHD, autism, emotionalities, mental health issues, all of that needs to be taken into account first, because we've grown so much as a society that we can do the work. We just have to make sure we're centered and regulated internally before we can do the external work.
I'd also like to add we need to start hiring teachers and admin of color
Mm-hmm. Oh,
because
100%.
that could,
Mhm.
really help this issue
Like
and
kids need
support.
to see themselves. Yeah, they need to see themselves. They need to have the support. Like I don't know what my black kids are going through. I don't know what my brown kids are going through. I don't know what my Hispanic
Yeah.
Latino kids go through. I can understand and like they can tell me their stories, but I don't have those lived experiences. And I can
Yeah.
help you only so much. And that's what I do with my families. I use my whiteness to be like, okay, I know how to navigate these systems because I'm white. Let me teach you how to do it.
Mhm.
Let me tell you what's easy for me. And there are, plenty of schools out there that would rather put whiteness over supporting families. And so that's where we
Mhm.
really need to look at the social validity, particularly of our EL students, our kids who have like our multilingual learners who have English as a second language.
Mm.
Because like those kids, they may speak English, they may have a full understanding of English language when we're talking, but when it comes to really comprehending the nuance of words and why words are bad words here versus not over in their countries of origin, that like it's going to be an impact in our classrooms. So they might say the F word, but it doesn't mean to them what it means to us. So we have to understand that that's not necessarily a bad thing. We have to react in a manner in which we're coming at it from understanding that kid and teaching them the new norms or the new way we want to behave in class or the new ways to get attention or, don't just do things for fun and to get attention because
Mhm.
there is that aspect, but like we have to give attention to the kid, not the behavior kind of
I
thing.
like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we've been talking about decolonizing, and you said that you're an ABA. You wanna touch on that one?
Oh, yes. And I'm probably going to get a lot of feedback from my colleagues in ABA. ABA is applied behavior analysis, and it is, BF Skinner, all of the Pavlov dogs, operant behavior, respondent behavior, all of those things.
Mm.
You can boil it down to the functions of behavior as sensory, escape, attention, and tangibles, right? We all, if we're in education, have heard those at some point in life that you have to figure out the function of the behavior at this point. Function of the behavior, the reason why they're doing it. That is all watered down ABA. I love it. It's great. It gets the information out there, but that is not a great way for ABA to be applied. Because now what we have is overused supports, overused ideas and strategies that no one really understands their implications. Token systems, I think, are great systems. Well, let me rephrase that. I thought were great systems until I really started implementing in schools and was like, these are pointless. Teachers can't use them. Kids have no clue what they're being used for. They're not effective in the classroom environment, but everyone is requesting a token system. Oh, they just need a token system to get through their day. For what? Just to like get through the day? Oh, compliance based, compliance based. So ABA has turned into compliance. There's all these different organizations that, still practice some very horrible strategies and interventions like electric shock therapy simply because, oh, the research says, oh, it's an ABA strategy, and they're horrible things that are
Mm.
being done in the name of ABA. And so we have to talk about those to bring them to light so we can really, as a field, move away from the negatives because ABA has also been very beneficial to certain people, has been very beneficial to certain groups. It's not great for everyone, but ABA is just one part of behavior. And that's where like a lot of behaviorists, particularly BCBAs, don't realize that, yeah, we're trained in ABA, but applied behavior analysis, behavior is everything we do. So we need to be looking at other ways and other strategies to apply effective behavior management and strategies because we know what the principles are, but we need to really look at ABA from a way that's not going to be harmful. Because if you look at ABA, there's no difference between ABA and the principles of conversion therapy. All you're doing is doing something to change someone into what you want is normed, what you want is normal, what you think is right. And who am I to say what's right for anyone else? All I want to make sure is you're not breaking any bones, you're not drawing any blood, you're not going to kill yourself or someone else, and you're able to meet your wants and needs in an effective manner without dysregulating yourself or dysregulating the environment. I don't think that's too much to ask. Those are great standards to base off of, and providing a positive environment where we're allowing kids to fail is what school's about. They should be failing in school. They should be screwing up, and we should be there going, "Oh yeah, that was a bad mistake. I'm glad you noticed it. Let's go do this thing now." Or "I'm glad you noticed it. How do you fix it?" And that's where like I'm trying to take ABA, and what we're doing is a lot of teachers have gotten so used to telling kids what to do, we've forgotten we have to start asking them what they need to do.
Mhm.
Because I can say all day to the kids, what do you need to go do this, go do that, go do this. But when it comes down to them being 18 and I go, okay, I need you guys to go do these things, and I'm going to give you some vague instructions, but I need to get done. They're going to be like, well, I don't know what to do. Okay, well, I need you to problem solve. Here's my problem. How do you get from where you're at to solve my problem? Like, that's the whole point of problem solving in jobs and everything we do. And right now, our workforce isn't prepared to problem solve. They're prepared to be told exactly what to do, and that's a problem.
Yes, 100%. Creative problem solving seems to be, well, in every school that I've worked in, which I've always worked in low income, and I haven't always worked in special education, but that's been like 95% of my career. It is very compliance based, creative problem
So compliance
solving.
based.
Yeah, super reward incentive centric. Um, and you're right. And then people get upset, like teachers will get upset or an admin or be like, "Oh, they can't think for themselves." Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, like
Yeah.
that's literally what we're teaching them to do. So, okay.
That's literally where my name, The Lowly Behaviorist, came from. Is me and like my work bestie. One year, we're working really closely with this kiddo who was just, we loved him to death. Like, he was a great kid, but every other adult in his educational world was failing him. And so, like, he was using his words, he was doing his thing, and every day when we would work with him, he'd be beautiful because we would validate his words and be like, yeah, that really is sucky, that sucks, I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. And he'd be beautiful to us because all we're doing is like using his same language to validate him. It made no sense what he was saying anyway, so like we're like, cool. And like we would be like, hey, teachers and admin, do this with him. Oh, we're not doing that. Well, it's going to help you or you're going to get bit. We're not doing that. He needs to comply. I'm like, okay, cool, that's fine. And I became a behaviorist, and I was like, I'm just slowly behaviorist. If you don't want to listen to me, that's fine. And then they get bit. I'm like, I need to stop getting bit. You need to help me. I'm like, well, I told you, let him use his words and ask for a break. And you're like, no, he needs to do the work. You can do the work later.
Right.
Like, I don't do my work all the time. Like, I can go, I'm not doing that right now. Like bills, there's a 15-day grace period. If I don't want to pay it right when it's due, I can be like, I'll pay that tomorrow. Like, there's no deadlines for adults.
My husband just texted me today, and he's like, if you don't pay the electric, they're gonna shut it off on Monday. I'm like, okay, fine. I don't know why I don't put it on auto pay, but it's just, I think I don't know. I have this like I don't want to do it because I know I should. So I just revolt against myself.
That.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But
yeah, how dare
no,
you
it's
set
legit.
your own standards against yourself? Like, no, I don't control myself. That's someone else's job.
I know, yeah, right. Like, so what do you, because this is a huge conversation that I've been having with other teachers. The It seems like a lot of teachers' problems are rooted in their need for control.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what advice or what are your thoughts on that? And what advice do you have?
I have a lot of advice. There's I've worked with teachers who are very much about wanting structure and control, and they always want it because they're like, this is how they were taught, that kids need structure to learn. And so they're always coming at it from the best way to support kids because that's what they were taught. The kids that we're dealing with are not the kids that you and I were when we were kids. They're not even the kids that they were 10 years ago. I've been in the field in education since I was 19. I've grown up with Gen Z. I've raised Gen Alpha. And the things that they are doing are vastly different from each other. And it all has to do with just technology and what they're exposed to. Kids don't know how to use technology. Yeah, they can get on their Facebook and they can get on the Instagram. What am I, a 90-year-old? The Instagram, the Facebook?
Instagram.
The Instagram, you know, that MySpace, they're still using those things with their top 8 friends. They can get on all of it and use the interface. But when it comes to troubleshooting and problem solving using an app or using technology, Control V, like they don't know the shortcuts. They don't know these things. I mean, there are a lot of them that do, but most of them really don't know technology like we do, where we've learned to troubleshoot when a computer was broken because we grew up with technology and how it is. It's no longer that trial and error piece by piecemeal where you're building your own computers because like your CD drive is no longer working and you want to burn some CDs off LimeWire. Like, you know, like they don't have that. They have an iPad that they just click download and call it a day. So like Same with, that's where our kids are now, and so we have to completely change how we approach them. Their learning has been point and click their entire life. Here's an iPad, where's the A? Point and click. Their assessments are now, hey, here's a sound, point and click, multiple choice. Like everything is point and click. And so we have to change the way we interact with them and make it more interactive, because they're not just going to sit and read a paper. Most of our kids are illiterate. This is a huge issue. And if most of our kids are illiterate, we put it on parents. If their kids are illiterate, do we think the parents are illiterate? I mean, all over TikTok, there's like the kids, the adults who are teaching themselves to read. So it's like, we know we have a literacy problem and are acting like it's not affecting our kids and blaming the parents, and then parents blame the teachers, and then everyone blames each other. When really we just need to do a huge reform in our education system and really make sure that we are meeting the kids where they're at. That didn't answer your question. So going back to your question though, what is the total soapbox tangent?
Yeah, but that was fantastic. I was just gonna let you go.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So my advice to teachers is breathe. As simple as that. They can't control everything, and it is a bad place to be at when you want to control everything, because now all you're doing is you're spending more time fixing and policing, and you're not teaching. Because when we're policing, we're not teaching. We're only focused on what they're doing wrong. So if you just breathe and find what they're doing right, or even just call that out, like, hey, I already told you X, Y, and Z. Why are we doing X, Y, and Z? What are you going to do differently? Are you going to be able to change this? Put it on them. Put the onus on them. Because that's the best way, where like you're calling out the behavior, you have the rules. The more you just communicate with them, the better. And one-on-one in the class, when when one kid's dysregulated, everyone's dysregulated. Like your class is gone. And so now you need to re-regulate, co-regulate with them and validate it. So breathe, co-regulate, and validate is what I would tell teachers. Like regardless of how calm, cool, and collected and like, about structure, not about structure you are, is just breathe, talk, and validate with your kids, because that's going to be the best to build that connection and that relationship. And then from there, when there's a struggle, when they aren't doing their work, if they are messing up, if they are going to get deadlines, they're going to feel way more comfortable coming to you, because they're going to be like, oh, she has those days too, he has those days too, they are completely human too, they know what it's like not to want to do things, they understand it, because we understand it. We as adults know we want to put on a movie some days and just not do anything, but we can't. So like, why not say to the kids, yeah, get ready, it's going to be the rest of your life, but here's how you manage it, because we're managing it just fine. We have experience though, the kids don't.
Right. So can you, because a lot of my audience is gen ed, they're gen ed teachers kind of like being introduced to behavior. Can you talk about what dysregulation is and what co-regulation is?
So dysregulation is, so those are those things when you start to see your kiddos start not to be their baseline. So when they come into their class, you know your kids. You're like, they're going to be off today. Those are the things that you can start to pick up as dysregulation, really, is those little indicators that something's not right. So they might be talking more, they might be more quiet than usual, but it's just something's off internally. They woke up bad, they didn't eat, they're really stressed out. So they're dysregulated on the inside, where their sensory system isn't calm, cool, and collected. They're kind of going into that fight or flight state. They're not in their ready to learn state. They're like ready to like bounce if they need to. So that's like that dysregulation. And so that's what happens like with the anxiety and the things that when like kids make really sudden noises, drop books, get up and storm out, make loud noises, all of those feelings, that started dysregulation. And so what we want to do is in those moments, that co-regulation is where we know as adults, take that deep breath. We know, center ourselves. This is fine. I'm still getting paid no matter what. Like we have those little mantras we tell ourselves to get through the day. I have I have some wine in my fridge for the end of the day. Kids don't have that. Kids don't know how to go through that. So it's literally just co-regulating and doing all of that internal process out loud with the kids. So modeling it and saying, whoa, that was a lot, wasn't it? Let's take a deep breath real quick and breathe and center. Like we're doing it with them. We're regulating our systems with them. So we're modeling it and helping them regulate too. So it's kind of that everyone's dysregulated. Now we're re-regulating together, as opposed to just us regulating and the kids going, okay, be quiet now. Like that's just telling them to be quiet, not helping them regulate their nervous systems.
Not only that, if you're giving them a directive and they're dysregulated, the they're most likely not. They don't have access to their,
Uh-huh.
their frontal
Uh-huh.
lobe, like their executive functioning. It's
Hmm.
probably going to stress them out more.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
they're not in their thinking brain.
right, right.
I think thinking brain and downstairs brain. No, that's not it.
Upstairs,
Thinking brain,
downstairs.
upstairs, downstairs brain are
Yep.
the yeah. When kids are dysregulated, they're in the downstairs brain. That's like that fear motive, all
Yep.
that intrinsic response. We're just gonna fear response. Thinking brain is we actually have control over our thoughts.
So with co-regulation, you're talking about like modeling and
Hmm.
like naming it. Like that was really
Naming it.
disruptive. That was really stressful. That was really,
Hmm.
that made me like my heart beat. Like even talking about like the physical reactions because some kids
Hmm.
they don't know that that's anxiety.
Hmm.
Like
They don't.
most of my kids, I mean, I feel like they know more than what we did
Hmm.
when we were their age because of social media and it's mental health is really being, talked about more.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they really don't understand what
No
like,
clue.
yeah, what anxiety feels like. Right?
Because like we're always talking about, oh, what's your body feel like? Oh, this is what it feels like, but we don't like connect it to those emotions.
Mhm.
Even as adults, I had literally a 33-year-old friend who was like, I'm really lucky that I've never suffered from depression or anxiety, and then like goes into this story about how like he went to this place for the first time, he didn't know anyone, so like he was really uncomfortable and stood against the wall and was like, oh, so you experienced some anxiety?
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, is that what that is? I'm like, yep, that's anxiety for you. And so, like, even adults don't know what
Right.
anxiety is. Like, even walking through it with the kids as the adult, going, is this really what I'm feeling right now? It's
Mhm.
going to help us become so much better aligned with our bodies
Oh
to where
my
we're going to
god.
be able to figure out what our stress points are so we can start to avoid them. If we always know math is really annoying and loud and stressful, what can we do as adults to kind of like mitigate that for ourselves? Maybe we turn off the lights to make it calmer, or we put on some music so we enjoy it a little bit,
Or take
kind of
breaks.
things like that. Or
Mhm.
take breaks. Like, we're going to
Uh,
do math outside now. Let's go count some rocks.
no, yeah. So I always say like my emotional intelligence just I mean, skyrocketed when I started working with behavioral in a
Hmm.
behavioral program because we that's what we focus on is,
Hmm.
emotional intelligence, and it helped me
Yep.
so much. Because you're right. It's not really like the understanding depression, like deep understanding mental health. We're not we're just not advanced. Our
Hmm.
country, it's
Hmm.
just not spoken about, it's not taught. Um, and it should be. But
It
okay.
really,
Oh,
mental health is totally under supported, and the amount of stress that kids are under, and like the things they go through, the things they're talking about. I'm like, I didn't even think about that when I was their age.
mhm.
Hmm.
I know. It's crazy. Which
Yeah.
we should I know I have these questions, but you know what? I'm just gonna like keep we're just gonna keep going. So we bonded on over a um well actually we bonded over like I saw a post of yours and I'm like, damn, this is dope. And I feel like that was like in like early fall. But then I
Hmm.
had a post and I think it ignited this live of
Yeah.
the kids sledding. And it was like
Yes.
these kids are out of control. And then I spoke about like the pandemic and what
Hmm.
that did to the brain, where these kids
Hmm.
were in a developmental,
Hmm.
sensitive period and they
Hmm.
experienced a mass traumatic event. Can you
Yep.
talk about like what you've seen and what do you think the pandemic did for our
Oh.
students?
Oh, our pandemic and developmental levels. So a lot of like developmental levels is just something that's starting to be talked about in Gen Ed, as in like something I think I've only heard about in the last 2 years. And it's something that it's in SPED we've been talking about for a good like 5 years.
Mhm.
But they've been around, I think, since 2004 in that area, like the early aughts, where like they really became a big thing with pediatricians starting to say, like, oh, this is developmentally where kids are appropriately supposed to be throughout their years. A few years ago, they did a big revision. The American Academy of Pediatrics came through and did like a revision of everyone's developmental levels and where they should be given age groups. And so, certain age groups, there are things that we should be doing that are appropriate strategies, and things that are just like way too advanced because their brains are not developed in a manner where they can understand any of the concepts. So that's where a lot of like token systems really aren't appropriate for anyone under the age of 7. At that point, you under the age of 7, you don't really understand the concept of that idea of what the is trying to be taught. Yeah, you can go through those rote motions of, oh, here's a token to get the thing, but you don't have a connection to any behavior. So what we had was we had these social categories, these developmental categories up until 2023 that everyone was following, that, oh, 7 to 11-year-olds are supposed to act this certain way, and 5 to 7-year-olds are this way. They're like pre-academic, pro-social, vocational, not pro-vocational, yeah, vocational, and then sensory motor, like the kids who eat things, that's sensory motor. That's the oral stimulation that babies do to like learn about the world. As they adapt things, they mouth things. That's that sensory motor kind of group. 7 to 11 is like academic, pre-academic skills. So you're learning math, arithmetic. 5 to 7, you're learning your pre-academic skills, your pre-vocational skills, where you're just learning to move your body, exist in a space that's not your own body or your own house. So there are all these different things. And so we had a clear understanding before the pandemic. Then the pandemic hit. And all of that blew up. All of that went to shit. Pardon my French. But like what we end up seeing now is kids are 2 to 3 years developmentally behind, is what studies were saying at the start of the pandemic, and then post-pandemic when we started going back to school. I haven't looked at the recent studies. Something, I think the most recent one that I looked at was saying something about 5 to 6 months behind academically where they should be. But really what happened is when you look at the kids as a whole, academically they fell. They slid because their academics weren't there. But as a whole group, they slid backwards. So it's not like the kids are having a COVID slide or academically slid behind. They just fell behind what the documented data said based on previous years of data. So it's not like anyone was behind anyone else. They were just behind what the standard was. And instead of us saying, let's move the standard line back because we know we just went through this huge, like massive disabling event, socially changing event that changed our globe. Like we're more connected than ever because of the pandemic, but also understand less, but also understand more. It's like this weird dynamic of everything exploded during the pandemic, but also didn't because everything shut down. So these kids, all of this big bubble shifted. And instead of saying, oh, let's shift our standards and really rethink about what we're doing, we held the line at the same standard. And so all these kids who just went through this traumatic experience came back to school, and the adults said, oh, everything's fine, and ignored the pandemic. We ignored that they went through trauma. We ignored all the things. And so instead of rebuilding and reestablishing and going through a whole rebuild of what education means for these kids after 2 years, we basically re-entered them into a traumatic system. And so we re-traumatized them. And now that's where we're at, is these kids who haven't been regulated since school closed. Why haven't they been regulated since school closed? Because none of the adults are regulated. The kids would be fine had we gone back to school with regulated adults. But our adults weren't regulated. And because we weren't talking about it, we weren't regulating ourselves, we weren't co-regulating with the kids. Because we as adults are still talking about COVID. I go to schools all the time and they're like, oh yeah, COVID really damaged this group of kids. And it's like, it didn't damage these kids. It damaged us as adults. The kids didn't know what it was like before. They don't really know what it's like after. Some of the older ones do, like the high school students. But we focused more on what they were losing instead of focusing on ways to support them when they came back. And that was what I saw when I was on campus, is all of the administration was more concerned about just getting kids back on campus to make people happy than actually caring about the kids and caring about how to bring them back on just in general. Like, who cares about the COVID restrictions, masks, no masks? Just how are you going to bring back that many kids who have spent 2 years away from each other back into a classroom where they're going to spend all day with each other? And you expect it to go great? I don't want to spend that much time with my coworkers. And you're going to expect them to? Like, I love my coworkers. I love my school besties, but no, I'm sorry. Like, I can maybe deal an hour or two of you and then I want to leave. That's where our kids are at. Not to mention the fact we've set up some weird rules and restrictions now when they come back. 2 years of being able to be on your phone, have those conversations, be able to distract yourself when you're feeling anxious, to no phones. Instead of teaching kids how to use their phones now in education, because when we were growing up, we were told there won't be a calculator in your pocket. Lies. Liza Minnelli, lies. Like, we have a calculator, we have a phone, we have a computer, we have a camera. Everything that we need is in our little pocket. I'm literally doing a live on the
Mhm.
internet from a phone. So, like, instead of shunning phones, we need to embrace them. They're not going anywhere. And if we shut off phones and we say put them in your backpacks, we say don't use them, all we're doing is telling kids, find ways to use it, find ways to sneak it. And then all we're doing as adults is getting frustrated. So it's really, COVID didn't do anything to the kids. It did a lot to us, and we've refrained and refused to learn from it.
That's solid. You're absolutely right. We didn't process, we didn't come back and have the conversations that we needed to. And I just remember, like, I just wanted it to be over. Like, I didn't want to talk
Mm-hmm.
about it anymore. I don't want to hear
Mm-hmm.
about it anymore. I just wanted to not have to wear a mask. I wanted it to be back to normal,
Mm-hmm.
you
I
know?
still wear masks every time I'm on a campus. I have
Mm,
not taken my mask off in 3 years. And I mean, I want to say that's because of COVID. And I mean, it is kind of. But at
mm.
this point, schools are petri dishes. And like, I have not got, like, I was getting strep throat 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year because of the number of just grossness at schools because of how petri dish. But like, wearing a mask, this is genius. Ever since COVID, kids spitting at me in the face, it's not getting in
Yeah,
my mouth now. Like,
that's true.
the perks of a mask.
A
I'm like,
mask,
wait,
yep. Yeah.
like those face shields, they got so cool. Some of them, I'm like, wait,
My gosh.
crayons
I know.
ricocheting off my face. I'm like,
It's
I'm
the
Darth
spit
Vader.
for me. Like, yeah, we didn't get
Uh-huh,
spit on
uh-huh.
or
No, no,
bit,
it was
man.
or bit. It
I
was so
didn't
nice.
get
Their
bit.
mouths were covered. Like,
Yeah.
yes, it was so nice.
It wa
If only.
yeah, it's I talk about COVID, like, I just remember at the very beginning thinking, like, I don't have to work for, like, a
Mm-hmm.
month? Like, okay, like, especially in March.
Mm-hmm.
School is nuts in March. I mean, everybody,
Oh
but
yeah,
mainly
it's
everybody that listens
wild.
to me are teachers. Like,
Uh-huh.
February and March, it is, like,
Uh-huh.
we're going at, like, staff, we're going at each other's throats, even though we love
Uh-huh.
each other, like, we all just, we everybody wants to be done,
It's that
and
spring fever. It's that I
oh
need
my
to use the shower,
gosh.
sister. Get out of the bathroom.
Yes, yeah.
Fever. Like, it
Oh,
is
yeah.
that intensity.
We're snapping, yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
then, the kids can feel it, and they're snapping at
Mm-hmm.
us, and everybody's snapping at each other. February and March, ooh,
Oh yeah, it
um,
is. That whole time that I was like, we just need to end the school year and cancel it. Not even because of COVID. I was just like, this year's over. Because like COVID happened in 2020. I the Saga shooting happened in
mm,
November of 2019, right
mm,
before we closed down. So I was like, we just need to end the school year. It just needs to stop. Like, we can't deal with this anymore because like
mhm.
our elementary school is really close to that shooting, and so it was a lot. We just need to end the school year. No one wanted to end it, and I was saying it for a good 6 months. And then March 13th, schools closed, and I was like, uh oh, what did I do?
You
What
put
did
that
I
into
do?
the universe.
I put it out there. I mean, I'm not I mean, yes, it sucks that it happened. I wish I would have gotten a break. I mean, school closure happened. I had maybe a week off, and then it was like, okay, how are we figuring out what we're doing with all of our services to make sure we can still meet our kids' IEPs? And I'm like,
Mm.
well, I guess I'll be calling a lot of parents for the next few months, and that's what we did. Every day I was on the phone with a parent. I was like, hey, what can I do? How can I help you? What do you need? Because it was a wild time.
How was that?
It was hard being in special education with parents whose like kids that they needed to be on campus, not just because
Yeah,
like it was detrimental to their education, but just like to give the parents a break, to give the kids a break from their parents. Like, they needed that, and the parents need support because we're raising a kid in general, you need a village.
mhm,
Raising a student who has additional needs
mhm,
or who has communication struggles or who just doesn't engage in a way where you actively can know what they're trying to tell you at all moments of the day, and they
mhm,
might have some more physical behavior, that like, you need help, you need a village, you need a community. And like, listening to these parents just go, I want my kid back in school, so they have that community, so they have that help, so I'm not alone, so someone can tell me what I'm doing wrong. Like, them pleading, it was heartbreaking. That's why, the school district that I worked with, we did a pretty good job, surprisingly, bringing back our kids. It was a lot of work and a lot of me fighting with them to get it to happen, It didn't happen quite as it should have. It happened one of the better ways. But we brought our kids, our biggest needs kids, back, and it really was really beneficial to them right when August started that following school year. But
Yeah.
it wasn't easy the first few months of calling parents every day and just being like, "What can I help you with? Let's try this," and like trying to throw spaghetti at walls over
Mhm.
the phone or over like a Zoom telehealth, hoping that that was okay because like, what do you do? You're not ready for this,
Right.
um, kind of thing, and just getting parents as much support. I was on the phone a lot during those 3 months. I think
Yeah.
most of my days were like 12-hour days, just talking to parents and writing as many things in visuals that I could for the kids and sending them digitally to parents. I think I had 3 or 4 like PowerPoint Go Talks where like I had you push this and my voice comes out just so parents had something that they could communicate with their kids. Virtual social stories where I was like literally recording PowerPoints with my voiceover, reading the story out loud so the parents could just give it to their kid and like had something to help them so they weren't running out of the house or, could sleep at night or, just live without having to
Yeah.
worry every moment about their kid. It's a struggle sometimes, but, we're educators for the parents and for the kids.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest difference. Well, not the biggest difference, but that is the difference between like the teachers and the service providers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, and I just like blacked out that
Mm-hmm.
March, what April, March, April,
March,
May.
April, May, June. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were
Right. Yeah.
back in August. But it's
Yeah.
like when you were talking about that, I'm like, "What did I do those months?" But I was teaching, like, we were teaching
Mm-hmm.
virtually, and
Mm-hmm.
we were, like, talking to our parents, but it was like I blacked it out. It
Yeah.
was that was crazy. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. My
Um,
husband was a high school teacher and he was on like we had to share bandwidth, so he's trying to teach his classes as I'm like trying to talk to parents on a Zoom call, and it is the most horrific thing in the world. Like we all blocked it out, I think, and I'm just like, no, it didn't happen. What are you talking about? We need to talk about it. We have some trauma.
yeah, yeah, we do. We really do. Okay, so
Mhm.
we're getting short on time. I wanted to end this at around 5:30. So, um I gotta prioritize here.
There is a question here that I have because I copied the questions.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
One is something about we should be focusing on the environment and not trying to control the kids. I really
Mhm,
think that's a great question, and
mhm.
I also like I mentioned needs for like a med check and why
Yeah.
this information is really important to classrooms. Like both of those, I think are really
Mhm.
good questions to end on. If I can make it quick,
Oh, yeah,
that
yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, so so why should teachers feel like they should? Okay, so we should be focusing on the environment and not trying to control our kids. Why should teachers feel like they shouldn't control their students? Don't you have to control students to keep your class in order and learning? Yes. So you have to control the environment because you can't control the kid. The kid's going to do whatever the kid's going to do. But if you set up your environment, you can manage that kid's behavior and doing whatever they want, right? It's the whole adage you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make the horse drink, but you can set the environment up to where that horse is more likely to drink. So if I'm gonna spend all day with that kid or all day with that horse, I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm gonna go for a horseback ride. It's probably not gonna have that much water. I take the horse to the water after like 3 hours. It's probably gonna drink that water. But if I'm giving it water all day and we're running around and I go to take the horse to the water, it's not gonna drink because it has water all day. So it's setting your environment up to where you're kind of holding back on some of the reinforcement, satiating on some other reinforcement. So if your kids want attention, satiate them on attention. You can control that. You can control all the attention you give to them. Then they're not going to want your attention anymore. And you're going to be able to get your lesson done. If they're doing things for your attention, there's nothing wrong with that. We ask them to actually do things for our attention. Like we ask them to raise their hand. That's doing things for attention. So we can control the environment and set it up to ways that we enjoy, that we're fine with. If we want them to throw a sock to get our attention, that's how we want, set that up. Make it fun. Control the environment and the expectations you have for your kids. And it's going to make it easier for them to engage with you so you don't have to control them. Because if you're focused on controlling them, you're not worrying about what's happening in the environment. Because ABA and behavior is all about how we interact with the environment, right? So if we can control the environment where it makes it fun and engaging and learning, I'm going to want to do that. But if it's boring and you're yelling at me all the time, I'm going to do everything in my power to piss you off. And I was that kid, that teenager. Ask my math teacher, who was surprised that I wanted to be the TA for her in 12th grade because I annoyed the living hell out of her in 10th grade. Like, don't tell me no and I won't bug you. But you told me no one too many times, so I harassed you and annoyed you. It's who I was, and now I'm a behaviorist, so it makes sense. And then, so I hope that one answered why we need to control the environment. And then mention the needs check and the meds check. What can teachers do with this information if these variables are beyond their control? So if we know what our kids' needs are they able to bathe all day, every day? Do they have housing? Do they have insecure housing? Are they hungry? Some of these things, if we know about, we can't control what happens outside of school. But if we know they're hungry when they come to school, we can give them free lunch. We can give them lunch access. We can give them food access. And it might come out of our own pocket. Don't ask me why it has to come out of our own pocket, but that's because a whole host of things. But I'd rather give my money as a service provider back to those kids to pay for their food, to give them food, because if they're hungry, we can meet that need and control that. So it's all about controlling those environments and those needs that we can benefit from. When it comes to like meds, if your kid is on meds and you notice they aren't on meds, that's the day where you can go, we're going to be a little lax with you. We're going to be relaxed. If you just sit in your chair today, cool. Thank you for sitting in your chair. I'm not going to put a lot of demands on you because I know you're off. Why would I force the same demands when you're not the same person? You don't have the same supports for me to force the same demands. But if you have the same the medication and you're ready to go, let's go ahead and force the same demands. But if we know something's off, we can modify and lessen them. And that's where it comes to meeting our kiddos where they're at when they walk into our classroom. So if we know what their needs are, we can meet them where they're at and really help support them access their education in a way that they need.
Awesome. I like the lowering the demands because I don't think that teachers feel like that's acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But it totally is.
It totally is. Like, you can't do everything all day, every day at 100%, and that's okay. And on those days that you can't, we're going to lower the demand a little bit. But on the days that you come in fine and you're giggly and happy and you're showing off and you're doing all that, we're going to have a little bit heightened demand because we know you're capable of it today. Like, it's meeting the kids where they're at and like really working with them. If they're always not turning in work, figuring out why they're not turning in work. Is it too much? Let's figure out, is it a way we can lessen the demands, only get some of the work out? Like, some work is better than none. So how can we work with the kids? And that's really all it's about. Because even in adult lives, we are working with other colleagues on what we do, team building. I like the idea of turning like group projects into like, what's your role? And everyone just picking a role and like doing a group project. That's what we do in an adult life. Who's going to do what? We delegate tasks. So that's kind of like what we do with kids. Or at least teach them those skills because they are old enough because of the technology and the way that they are interacting in society now. Their basis is very different. And there's some things we can give them that they're ready for and other things we have to change.
Solid. And I just want to look through. And so we still have a few minutes and we just talked about controlling the environment and doing some needs checks, med checks, like lowering our demands. Patterns. I think that if we're going to talk about we've got to talk about finding the patterns of behavior.
We got to talk about the patterns. So when it comes to behavior, you'll hear SEAT. And so SEAT is sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. Those are the reasons why everyone does anything. They're very basic. Reasons we do anything is really for social mediation of positive or negative reinforcement and then punishments to get something or to avoid something, right? And all behavior happens in excesses or deficits. So what you need to do is really find, when is that behavior happening too much? And is it happening too much before or after certain times of day? On Mondays and Wednesdays, like what time of the week, after certain activities? Because once you can start identifying those little tiny patterns of when the behavior is occurring, then you can start to figure out why it's occurring. And you're like, oh, it's occurring because they really hate math. Oh, I'm going to get someone in here to help them with math. Or it's happening every day after recess. Okay, I'm going to go talk to them. Are they hanging out with friends? Yeah. Are they eating? No. Oh, they need to go eat instead. Like teachers already find their patterns. Teachers are great at finding patterns and using permanent product to like figure out and problem solve. The only problem is teachers have been given, in my book, misled and undertaught and undertrained, because teaching programs only give like one class of classroom management strategies if you're lucky, and then the rest is like, good luck, figure it out. And so you're based on what everyone else is doing in education. And so no one's actually taught how to manage, they're taught how to punish. But that's a whole, that could probably be a whole other episode. But once you find those patterns, you can address how to control the environment. So you got to look for those little tiny details, those little tiny times a day, reasons why. Is it every day they're hanging out with, Tiffany? That's the problem. Or, is it every day after Jose hits them that they have a problem 4 hours later? Like what is the thing that you can start to notice that reoccurs in all of the behaviors you're seeing, or all of the struggles you're seeing, and then you can address the behavior from there.
Awesome. Okay, so we are going to sign off. I just want to see, I've been checking. I don't think anyone asked any questions, which I should have addressed at the beginning. Like, hey, if you have any questions. So I think we are good to sign off. If you want to go through a little spiel about how people can contact you if they have questions, or where they can find you.
Oh yeah, you can find me on really any social at The Lowly Behaviorist, and then the website is www.lowlybehaviorist.com. Reach out, DM me, email me. It's Cody at lowlybehaviorist.com. It's a mouthful. We're changing it eventually, but we live and learn. When you do a URL and you're like, I'm going to do branding because I'm smart, right? And you use the same branding and you're like, oh, that is a mouthful to have to tell everyone. That is the renewal of next year when the URL has to be renewed. But yeah. So The Lowly Behaviorist everywhere, or at lowlybehaviorist.com for Cody. That's me. That's my email. But yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to end the live, and if you can just stay on.
Okay.
Oh, that's my sister. Okay.